Hey there, Liz. How are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
Thank you. Such a pleasure to have you back. Thank you again for last week. It was so valuable, so helpful. And we have a big question for you this week. Before we go into that, I'd just like to hear from you. Share with us why the non-diet approach, the health at every size approach, something that is so radically different to traditional weight-centric approaches. Tell us a little bit about why that's so important to you in your professional and personal life.
Yeah, it's so important to me because, we know from research, I also know from personal experience that diets do not work. And, not only do they not work, but they're also harmful. And, we know that 95 to 98% of diets don't work. Yet again, there's this myth that somehow it's everyone else's failure when a diet doesn't work, when in actual fact, 2 to 5% of dieters are quote unquote successful. And it is crazy. And we don't know what their mental health is like. And so, in terms of my personal experience, I just feel like I lost so much of my headspace, so many memories being stuck in my head, obsessing over food, over my weight. And, I had this moment when I was traveling South America, and I just remember I was just so in my head, freaking out about all the food that I could or shouldn't, I should eat, and I just remember having this moment where I just felt like I could be anywhere in the world because I'm just living in my head at the moment. Mm-hmm. And so it just steals so much of your life. And that's why I just feel so passionate to support other people with this, because the only thing that has worked for me, and we have research around this as well, is this health at every size non-diet approach. And we see that with other people as well. So
beautiful. Yeah, well, that sounds really familiar too. And I think it sounds like it just really comes from your heart, like it's what feels ethically right. And that's how I got into it too. I felt too much conflict working from traditional gym centric models and that. So I think we're really aligned there as well. And it's just crazy what you said. Like, we know the figures. We always hear that 95% of diets don't work. And it's just insane. We would never buy products. We would never continually push products in that had that much of a failure rate. Yet somehow diets, they're still out there. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it truly is crazy. Yeah,
I hear. So let's move into the question. I know you've got lots of thoughts around this, and we had a little chat before, and you mentioned that there is so much that you could share around this. So I know it's really tricky to kind of sum it up in a few points. So thank you for trying. I'm going to read out the question and we'll go into it. The question from our member says, or the concern says, I am feeling scared about my inability to do what I know helps me in feeling good and manage my good eating habits. How do I stop the craving for comfort food all the time?
Yeah, so I really feel for this client because I can hear there's a lot of fear in this question and there's a lot of mistrust.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense because diets teach us to not trust ourselves. Yeah. They teach us to override our wisdom, the wisdom of our body. Mm-hmm. Diets teach us to fear our hunger, to fear our cravings, to fear food. And so as I said, I just want to validate this client's fear because that's what we've all been taught, I suppose, in our culture, in terms of diet culture. Yeah, exactly. And it does take time to learn how to tune back into the body, and that the whole intuitive eating process, that does take time. Mm-hmm. In this question, you can hear that there's what stands out for me is there's this belief that there's a right way to eat, that there's a good way to eat and there's a bad way to eat. And I'm imagining that this person also feels like they are a good person when they eat a certain way, and a bad person when they don't eat that way. And again, that's just really diet culture rearing its head. Mm-hmm. There's also a desire to be in control, like how do I control this? Kind of like that fight with food that we get into when we're dieting. And again, what I'm hearing in the question is that there's self-blame, like, why can't I do this? Why is it my inability to be able to do this? And I suppose I just really wanted to reiterate here that control is the problem. We're not told that by diet culture. We're told that we don't have willpower, but it's the control that's a problem. It's the diets that lead to the binges. It's the restriction that leads to the obsession and the binge eating, the reactionary eating.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a personal failure. It's nothing, you know, it's nothing personal to this person. And so I think for me, that was really pivotal in understanding that it's actually the restriction and it's the control, which is a big part of the problem.
That makes total sense to me. And you just mentioned reactionary eating, and it might be helpful for this member to understand what that means. Can you share what that actually means?
Yeah, so reactionary eating is just this idea, and I actually really like it. I like it more than the word binge eating, because binge eating still, like, there's so much stigma around it, and it kind of has this energy like the binges are the problem. But when in actual fact, it's the restriction, it's the control, it's the not eating. And, you know, restriction, I'll just quickly say, can look like physical and mental emotional restriction.
Really
so physical restriction, I'm not going to eat this food, or I'm only going to eat this amount. And mental and emotional restriction, you could be eating everything, but if you're feeling guilty, if you're shaming yourself, you're still in your mind restricting.
Yeah, so if I've got that, you know, good, bad thinking around something, that's a form of mental restriction as well, right?
Exactly. And it's, you know, this idea, I'm not going to do this tomorrow. And so the reactionary eating is this idea that when we restrict, you know, the reaction is that we then want to eat more. It's our body actually trying to protect us. And it doesn't feel like that because we've been told that this is a personal failing. But yeah, I really like the word reactionary eating because it puts the emphasis back on the restriction.
Recognizing that restriction is driving the binging, but relating it reactionary eating, and just recognizing, hey, that's just a reaction to what a healthy body does in reaction to deprivation. It can be hard, I think, when you see, when you understand, if I'm not physically depriving, I'm not counting calories anymore, I'm not cutting out whole food groups, but if you really dig down, you might find there's those the judgments, and there can also be the I'm just trying to eat healthy, or you know, there's just that if it's some sense of control, usually it's accompanied by some form of restriction. So
Exactly. And the other thing is, in terms of stopping the cravings, I just wanted to say that, you know, cravings are our body's way of giving us information. And so in terms of wanting to, I'm trying to remember her wording, how do I stop the cravings for comfort foods? Well, first of all, like, comfort food can be a beautiful thing. Like, food has always brought us an immense, as human beings, an immense amount of comfort. And so I don't think it's ever about stopping comfort food, because it's a beautiful part of life. Yes, we may want more coping mechanisms in our life so that we can support ourselves. But I just wanted to put that spin on it as well, that, you know, cravings actually can be giving us a lot of important information about what we're needing mentally, emotionally, spiritually.
That's such a great point. Yeah, I think we totally neglect that in diet culture. We think cravings are a bad thing.
And like, I remember when I was transitioning, you know, the last bit of mental restriction and, you know, that I had, I would just say to myself, whenever I was eating something which I thought I shouldn't, you know, I just say to myself, my body needs this. And I know that might sound strange, but it was just me. I think when I took away that fighting, I was able to then just tune into my body more and just develop this trust. And I just sort of would just trust, like, this is what my body wants, and just sort of take away that fear. And
That's great. And how would you, do you have any advice around if somebody tried to do that, but they had that sort of thought coming up saying, my body doesn't actually want this, my body is feeling full, for example? Any advice around that?
Yeah, I suppose at that point, I mean, I think one of the things I say with comfort, you know, with what can be seen as emotional eating, and as I said, I think eating is emotional, but that's another talk. But I do know that point when you're not full, you are really full and you're still going to the food. First, I would say we need compassion. We need to not be judging ourselves. And if you are going to the food for the comfort, I would actually consciously eat it, instead of, if you are needing that comfort in that moment, at least allow yourself to have it. Because what often happens is that we feel so guilty, we eat the food, we're not present, we don't get the comfort from it, and then we just keep going, as opposed to saying to ourselves, wow, you know, I am physically full. but there's a part of me that's still wanting something and almost being curious, what is that?
Yeah.
And if you do decide to eat it consciously and asking yourself the question, what is this actually doing for me? But when we're judging ourselves, we block out all the wisdom. And so I'd love to go into more detail with that at another talk, but it took the judgment away. Like there were times when I'd be in, what's called emotional eating, and when it really was my most predominant coping style in my life. And there was a while where I would like literally be watching myself eating going, I'm not actually sure this is what my body wants. But then I'd get curious, well, what's this? What's the need? I'm needing some comfort. I'm needing some connection. I'm needing some love. And as I got curious without the judgment, eventually I didn't go to the food so much because I had other ways to meet that need. But yeah, I think taking the judgment out is really crucial, and engaging that curiosity.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think slowing down, when you're doing that, you're kind of slowing down and being more mindful and conscious and curious, rather than just sort of being in that automatic slowing down and being able to still reactionary eat or emotionally eat, but with that sense of connection with your body, and asking and curiosity.
Exactly.
Really help on that path.
Yeah, because you can't be compulsive and present at the same time. It just can't happen. Exactly. And so it is, I do think it's really, really powerful to do that. And sometimes I still go for food for comfort, absolutely. But I make sure that then I therefore get the comfort make sure I get the comfort from it, and I'm present. Yeah.
Much more enjoyable that way.
Yeah, totally. Because then it's actually fulfilled its need.
That's right. And I think you touched on this before, but generally we are taught that emotional eating is a really bad thing, like it's a terrible coping mechanism, but it's not, and you probably heard this before, it's not the worst coping mechanism it could use. It's not shooting up heroin, and it's not whatever. So recognizing that food is something that can give pleasure, and it can be really available and really quickly satisfying, and especially if you're doing it in that present way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So can we sum up? I know there's a lot more we can talk to, but
there is
a couple of tips.
3 tips. Yes. So the first thing I was going to say is just notice where diet mentality is showing up. And so you'll see this in your beliefs, in your speech, the way you're thinking. So just, are you calling foods good or bad? Is your self-worth attached to the way that you're eating? Again, no judgment. It's just getting curious, like where is diet mentality still here? Notice where, if you are physically and mentally restricting, and just with that understanding that is what's going to be leading to the out of control sort of, eating. Tip number 2 is to really see cravings as information. This is the lens, this is the way that our body talks to us. And so just kind of reframing that, moving from fear to connection. What is my body actually saying? What is it telling me? I really want to make sure these clients eating meals, because often dieters don't eat meals. And then this was me, confused why we're wanting to eat all day. And I really... What's that?
Like grazing?
Yes, grazing. I used to graze. I'd come home and I wouldn't eat a proper dinner, and then I'd be grazing all night, and I'd think that I had a problem. So make sure you're eating meals, and also make sure those meals are satisfying. Satisfaction is so important, because again, I would make these tuna salads totally unsatisfying, and then I would be like, oh, I've got an emotional eating problem. No, I just wasn't satiated.
Yeah, and I think a point to mention there too is satisfaction doesn't just come from like physical satiation, but also mentally and emotionally. So that soulless tuna and carrot salad or whatever,
I'd add some bread, I'd add some cheese, I'd add some seeds, I'd make it satisfying, and then
so much more pleasurable.
100%. And so I think that's really important. And then the third thing I was just going to say is, I think that I'd love this person to adopt more of a growth mindset, because just in terms of, and I'll explain. So fixed mindset is this idea that we are either good at something or we're not good at something. Just a really quick explanation. And growth mindset is the idea that the more we practice something, we will get better at it. And just in terms of the questioning, she says, my inability to do what I know helps me. And so I just can see there's this fixed mindset here, this idea that she can't do it. And I just really want to reframe that to maybe she can't do it yet, but with time and with practice and with reading and with support, absolutely this person will notice changes and be able to support herself better. And so I think that's a really, for me, that's a really big part of change as well. Just knowing that it is possible, that there's not some people who can do this and some people who can't. It's just about practicing it. So, and that takes time. Yeah.
It's fantastic. Yeah, because diet culture sort of teaches us, you know, you either fail, you either
yes.
succeed at the diet or you fail. It's very black and white.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like last little cheeky point, like just there's no failure, there's just feedback. If, you know, if there's times when you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so full, I just feel, you know, terrible. It's just about going like, okay, so what was happening for me there? You know, using everything. It's like a treasure bringing you closer to what you're trying to find out about yourself, you know, just exploring it all. So there's no failure at all.
Right. Yeah. So it's a completely kind of different perspective, shifts everything.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It's really, really helpful.
Cool.
So much.
No problem.
And just to remind everybody, we will put it in the link, but just remind us where to find you online.
Yes, so I'm at Life Unfiltered Coaching. Well, that's my Instagram, Life Unfiltered Coaching. And my website is lifeunfiltered.coach, and you can email me through that.